it going?
Alfie boy, I can't believe that boy. Yeah, he said, he kept that up and he's like, there's too many skeletons in my closet. He kept talking about it, don't argue with anybody.
Good evening and welcome to the West Hartford Public Schools Board of Education regular meeting for today, Tuesday, April 2nd, 2019, beginning at 7. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Cammie, would you please do the roll call?
Mrs. Blanks?
Here.
Dr. Greenberg?
Here.
Mr. Levine?
Here.
Mr. Paul Uke?
Here.
Ms. Poland?
Here.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson?
Here.
Mr. Zdanowitz?
Here.
Student Representative Gus Bacon?
Here.
And Megan Striffcave?
Here. Thank you. And Gus, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we don't have any revision to the agenda order, nor do we have student participation this evening. And the last time that I looked at our sign-up sheet, I didn't see anyone signed up, so I'll check again towards the end of the meeting. For unfinished business, we have the adoption of the 2019-2020 Board of Education budget. It is the recommendation that the Board of Education review the superintendent's proposed budget in the amount of $169,096,905, make revisions as necessary, and adopt the 2019-2020 Board of Education budget. May I have a motion? So moved. Motion has been moved and second. We shall have discussion and some questions. Now, the last time we were here, we did go through the budget in detail, and we did look at a number of items and had those items placed up on the screen. So what I'm proposing we do is we go through those items, and I believe we discussed that we would vote yay or nay, and then we would go through the rest of those items listed the same way and have discussion as we see fit. So the first item up is the CABE dues. Now, I believe I was in the minority, and I'm still probably in the minority, and I will just repeat what I said at our last board workshop, that I do understand a lot of my colleagues around the table for taking the CAPE out of the budget at this time. But my personal belief is I like the CAPE dues in there because of the professional development that it provides, the educational resources, being able to attend the annual meeting and learning from other boards around the state. And I do realize that we have those same services here in town, but I do think that the camaraderie among other board members who are seasoned as well as new around our state is very valuable, as well as being able to utilize a lot of the webinars that CAPE provides and other things that the boards can benefit from. I don't know if anybody else have any other discussion, or we could just move to a vote. Dave?
Thank you. Carol, I can't say that I disagree with you. I appreciate everything that CAPE does. It's a wonderful resource, but I feel, as I did 2 years ago when we first brought this up, that if we're asking others to tighten their belts within the district, that we as a board can also tighten our belt a bit, and that's why I will vote for eliminating it from the budget.
I appreciate that.
Wow, Dave, you and I, that was perfectly said. I shouldn't even say wow, very well said. And what you said, how we're asking people to tighten their budget, and this is part of our budget that we specifically, kudos to you for recognizing that. I spoke very, I think, detailed about it, and, I'm trying to think of something, we could relate to home. If you did not have something at home, I don't know, maybe you didn't have HBO and Showtime at home for 2 years. You could deal without it, and you don't need it third year if you're cutting your budget at home because you need to do that. And that's how I feel here. I still feel the same on CABE. I think I'm the one that brought this up. And I like Dave's point where, as a board, if we show, solidarity when we're looking to cut and we have another tax increase to our constituents, this is a perfect example of where we can cut as a board, because this solely belongs to us and not no one else. So, thanks, Dave.
No, I don't have any comments on this, but is the process that somebody will make a motion to take it out, or what's our process in this part?
I can.
You just vote on each one. You just vote on each one. It doesn't need to be a motion because the motion is for the overall budget. So then the motion will be for the budget as amended, but each one you can vote on individually.
So we could put this one to a vote. So I'm going to ask all in favor that the CABE dues come out, say aye, and those who are opposed will say nay. So all in favor for the CABE dues to come out?
Aye.
And I'm a nay, Cammie. So the next item up is the teacher's pension. I'm sorry, Rob, did you have something to add?
I was enjoying that vote, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, so we'll move to the teacher's pension. So this was an item that we put up with the $524,000, and do we want to have discussion? $524,216. Yep.
Yes, we talked about this a little bit last week during the workshop, and I was calling in remotely, so I appreciate the opportunity to have been able to do that, but I'm not sure that I was able to make my point the way that I wanted to. I still believe that we ought to partially protect ourselves against the possibility that we will be responsible for at least a portion of this teacher pension contribution. We don't know what's going to happen with the state budget. We won't know what's going to happen until long after both the board budget and the town budget are adopted. And I just would want to be a little bit conservative and fiscally responsible by putting some money aside. I'm wondering if I can sort of take the temperature of folks around keeping in $250,000, which would get us part of the way there in case this does come down the pike, or part of it comes down the pike. If it doesn't, it doesn't, but I just don't feel totally comfortable removing all of it because I think there are still too many unknowns.
So, I appreciate your response, Deb. Maybe I can help clarify some of this for you, too, is that if this number goes forward, even half, it goes to our tax bottom line. And then we would have to give it back a year from now. But it'll be real tax, it would be a real increase, and it would be assessed on our home mortgages and or our homes. So that's the reason we're taking it out. If, in fact, and there's a safe fail, so your proposal of a safe fail, if in fact, because we've given, I think, an average of, Chip, $700,000 was the average over 10 years? $700-ish thousand back to the town every year for the last 10 years, on average. And if we have to pay this, say come September, because July 1st is the fiscal year, then it goes back in anyway. It's not like, whoa, we're taking it out and we're never going to pay that amount. It's the matter of taking it out now. Mind you, we're the only, I think, through argument's sake, we're the only Board of Ed in the entire state with it in. So 168 towns don't have it in theirs. That says something as well. So if we keep it in there, it goes to our taxes, and then we give it back to the town to use at their discretion, which this is our budget. And we always give back to the town anyway. So I'm just trying to, my argument that day was that it doesn't matter, you keep $1 in there or $2.50, we're going to have to pay it no matter what. And this potentially is going to be 1.7, I think, Tom, you mentioned, in 3 years?
Yeah, over 3 years, it comes out.
So this is significant, and yet 168 towns decided not to put it in theirs, and I appreciate your response, but why should we ask our taxpayers to put it in when no matter what, we're going to have to pay it anyway, and then it would lower, I don't want to say a rounding error, but $500,000, it's a lot of money, that we can potentially not have to put on the burden of the taxpayers. So, that was my argument from the beginning. That stands as my argument. We have to pay this no matter what, but we don't necessarily have to attach it to these taxes this year, July 1st.
If I could, and not to disagree, just to point, some places have it in the municipal budget, so I don't want to mislead, that it is in some places town budget. Or
So Board of Eds, I'm still safe by saying Board of Eds.
You're absolutely right, yeah.
So I'm still safe with Board of Eds that have not.
As far as I know, yeah.
Yeah, let's roll the dice on that one, right? So it's just a matter of, here's a pretty large number that we don't have to put to the taxpayers, that's all.
So he stole a lot of my thunder, but just to kind of give you my perspective on where I'm coming from with it, it is a pretty similar place. But I feel very strongly, like Mark, that the amount of money in this budget is already significantly high, and so I'm more than happy to have a debate back and forth about legitimate expenditures, especially when they relate to improving classroom performance. This does none of that, and we don't even know if we're going to have to pay for it. And we always seem to give money back. And the town also, by the way, has a surplus fund. So since we have all those things in place as a backup, I agree with you actually, Deb, like it concerns me. And I'll feel a lot better when we get to June and they're not in session anymore and we don't have to worry. That's the joke every year. The most dangerous time is January to May or June when they're in session. And so if we get to June and there is like to your point, a 200 or 300 or even a $500,000 foothold that we have to fill, if there was no way that if we pass a budget without that in that, and then all of a sudden we're like, great, Tom now has to find a $500,000 in cuts. So are we going to lose teachers or aides or real things that will hurt kids? Then I would actually support you 100%. I'm 100% confident that will never happen. 100%, because we always give money back. And even if we zeroed out this year that they did the perfect job and that they spent down to the nickel. Sorry, the town still has a surplus fund of millions of dollars. So I feel comfortable that we have a backstop of funds if we end up facing this actual responsibility. I hope that our representatives in West Hartford at the House level and the Senate level fight and make sure that we don't. And I am kind of taking the temperature like Mark that, it doesn't seem like across the strait there isn't a wave of towns or schools that are are that concerned with it, so that they're reading the tea leaves that way. I think you used one of your phrases. You're rubbing off on me. So that's just my perspective on where I'm coming from. I mean, not trying to say that you're wrong and I'm right. I think we're coming at it from the same place, actually. I'm just comfortable in saying that we don't really need to account for this, and if we don't, it's not going to hurt our kids. He's not going to have to account for it because there are surplus funds that will be there anyway. So why, to Mark's point, now just create an extra budget line item where we're just going to be giving back $1.2 million to the town to do what they want with? As I said at the budget meeting, I just don't feel a need to do that. Let them tighten their belts. We don't need to tighten ours any more than the stuff we're arguing about tonight.
I have to say I feel completely torn about this. I certainly am not in favor. I mean, I certainly am not in favor of leaving in the 500,000. That's done. For me, the question is putting some of it in the 250 or putting none of it in. And my only concern is to go back to something that you said, Rob, about what if we do zero out on our budget and then we do have to pay it? And what if the town says, it's your budget, you pay for it? I would like to know what the 250 difference would be in cost. If we had to come up with that extra money, what kinds of things are we talking about losing potentially?
Well, I mean, anytime, if you're talking about so if you took 250,000 out and it was 274,000,
500. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you added a position that wasn't filled, that's the kind of thing you might not add a position, so you might freeze that position. So much depends on the timing. I think we'll have a pretty good idea of this, actually, by the time the town council votes. This piece didn't make it out of the education committee, but it's in front of the appropriations committee this Friday. So I think people will have the hearing on it's on the appropriations is on Friday. Appropriations comes out with theirs at the end of April, but I think they'll have a better idea of it by the end of April. So I wouldn't want to say exactly the 274,000, but you could freeze a position that's open. That would be a likely thing to do. Maybe cut back on some other areas. So it depends. Or some of the other things, like maybe you don't do the TA or substitute raise in the same way. But that's if you knew going into the summer. Once the school year is going, that's when you're freezing in ways that we can't really freeze. You try to freeze supplies. That would be a case where I would ask for it to come out of other funds or town funds and just to gauge throughout the year where we were. But
So I would just like to further this, because I mean, fine. I mean, like, if you want to, first of all, I don't think it's a fair question to ask you, because it's just putting him on the spot in a way that it's like, I mean, he'd find it, I'm sure, but I think we can't just dismiss the comment that you said if we're going down this road of, okay, so we zero out and the town says, sorry, it's your budget. Okay, well then I think as Board of Ed representatives, as an elected person in that position, like I have a right or a responsibility to fight back against that and say, okay, then let's just air out our grievances, our dirty laundry. Let's make sure that the town understands that's what they want us to do. They want us to go back to our superintendent and have him cut in ways that's really going to hurt, instead of potentially using a surplus that's just sitting there for a rainy day, which to me this would qualify as a rainy day. So if they want to come back at us and be like, no, you should have budgeted better and you should have put it in, then I would push back and be like, actually, to what Tom and Chip have said for years, we've given you guys a surplus refund every year for more years than anyone can remember. And so now, because we made a decision that didn't work out, you're going to come back and say, sorry, we can't help you. So I think that would be our job as elected officials to say, no, that's not fair, it's not right. And that's what we should do, is support our superintendent. I wouldn't just lay over and say, you're right, well, we got to make him cut. It's like, that's not fair. That's moving the goalpost. So I would fight really hard against that. And if they still made us do it, then we're going to have that uncomfortable process with Tom. But if we're supporting our superintendent, then we fight back against the town and say, that's not the way this is going to go down. I mean, that's what I'll do.
oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I'm also concerned as a former financial examiner, that we have that money that we give back every year, because there are years when it gets down to the wire and we didn't give back that much. It's a bit here and it's a bit there. We don't have a big place where we're stashing money just so we can give it back, and it would take some work to figure things out. There's part of me listening to the conversation that wonders, instead of an adversarial relationship with the town council, maybe we could work together in partnership with them. Maybe we could set aside half the amount. So that if it comes to that, and hopefully we would know where it's going to be by the time town council comes to vote, well, we're halfway there. And if the town council determines at that time that it's not needed, then they could come back to the Board of Ed and say, you can cut that from your budget. Wouldn't that be nice to kind of have a working relationship at a higher level than I think we've done in the past? This would be a proactive move on our part that maybe hasn't been done before, but I'd like to consider it. What I really don't want to do is do the supply freeze that we did before, to limit teachers and the number of copies they can make. When you get to the end of the year and suddenly you can't do certain things, that does affect the kids directly. And this would be one way. And Mark, you were talking about the home budget when we first started. I was thinking about, well, what if the boiler starts making noise at home? Well, I think it'll last another year, but maybe we could set aside some money so that if we do have to replace the whole thing, well, it's not such a painful hit to us. And I'm kind of liking that idea of half.
So don't forget that this number, whether we use it or not, what would you do with $7 million over 10 years? $700,000 to this budget, to Tom and previous superintendents to him, and the teachers out here in the audience, and principals. I'd give, and they want it, $700,000 a year if we had it. We don't normally have it, but we've given the town $700,000 a year out of our budget, Board of Ed, and give it back to them. And I have no problem doing that. That has been a good relationship. Tom has mentioned that we've always done that without hesitation. And in that is an olive branch in itself. But I remind you that this $524,000 on July 1st goes into our taxes. It's not just putting it in a bucket somewhere and it doesn't get assigned anywhere. It gets assigned to the taxpayers of our town. And I appreciate Tom, and I said it before, for him leading the way and lead by example and putting this in the budget. But as we've seen, there hasn't been a tolerance, both at the state and locally, for this particular line item. And if we took it out, and July 1st comes, and we take it out of what potentially is going to be the taxpayer's burden, and we have to pay it, we talked about this last week, it's going to be there. That dollar amount will be there. It's not like the town's going to have to, start selling copper pipes out of buildings. It's going to be there. And although $524,000 is a lot of money on the big side of our budget, $524,000, we can come up with that. It has to get paid no matter what. I am trying to avoid even the $250,000, the half, to be assigned on July 1st to the taxpayers of this town. Now, if we have to, and I can remember last year, when did the budget get finalized? October, November? We don't have that this year. So there were a lot of unknowns last year that we had to deal with that didn't come to fruition. And we had to wait till November when we pass ours in April. We're talking about probably a budget that's going to get passed very soon, and it didn't even make it out of the Education Committee. So I am trying to avoid this from being put on to the taxpayers, and then letting the town, if in fact it doesn't go through, which we think it's not going to, I think the tea leaves say it's not going to go through, then we give that money back to the town at their discretion to do what they want, not what we can do to put in the classrooms. Okay? Because that's what it really comes. That's why we're here, to put money in the classrooms so that these principals in this audience today can work with it. okay? But if we just throw $250,000 away back to the town, because that's the tea leaves are reading, I think that's irresponsible. I don't mind this, the boiler idea, but this isn't a boiler. This is somebody talking, this is your neighbor telling you your boiler might go when you just had one replaced last year. This isn't you just diagnosing your own boiler. This is somebody else telling me you need a new boiler and they've never entered your home. So I don't think the analogy's all that great on that one. So I'm trying to avoid, and Tom, one of the few towns in West Hartford that are actually having this argument on a budget about this number. So you know where I stand. I think we should take the entirety out. I don't think we should half or nothing. I think it should be all or nothing. And that's where I'm coming from, trying to relieve that 3+% that we're passing on to our town residents.
So I just want to make a comment on what Tom said about it not getting out of that they didn't vote it out of the Education Committee, and there's a just hobby, like to follow political discourse, and maybe you guys are all the same as me, I don't know. But for the general public or anybody listening on TV, my understanding is the reason that happened is because they don't want to go on record with the vote. And it's easier, and they've done this for years and years and years, where instead of passing out a committee, they wait till appropriations where it can get buried. And then they can just claim that it was part of the overall budget, and it's not the specific thing that they voted for. So that's the ugly side of politics, in my opinion. It would have been a courageous vote to have to do it in the Education Committee, and nobody wanted to do that. But whatever, that's politics, and that's the world that we live in. So I am not in favor of going halfway on it. I understand that you're trying to ride the middle line here, whatever you want to call it, and I appreciate that. I think it's a moderate point of view, honestly, but I really don't believe that this is our responsibility to shoulder. I just don't, and I don't think there's a scenario where we're going to have to come up with this money. That's my perspective, is that if we set it aside, we'll just give it back and it'll just disappear. It will not go to the folks in the audience. I like that point that he made, that it's a really actually interesting thought that over the last 10 years, $700,000 a year, it's a lot of money. I think you made a comment, like even if we spent at like the level of some of our comparison districts, whatever, it would be like that type of extra money just in 1 year. So I mean, it's like a drip to kind of combine that up over 10 years and say that's what we do. So it is kind of like, who do we represent? And when I say we, the board members, we represent the education component, the education part of this family, as I like to think of it, in this town. And so our first responsibility is to make sure that they get the funding that they need. So I never really thought about it last year, and it just kind of hit me towards the end of this process this year. That, as much as I certainly fight to say that we need to make sure that we're only spending what we need to spend and use that ugly C word of cut, at the end of the day, the money that they need and the money that we give them should go to them. Win or lose, like what their budget is should be their budget, and to give that much money back every year, maybe we don't give them enough kudos, all the people sitting at this table and Tom, because, corporate America or a lot of other government agencies spend to the nickel. They just, you deserve a thank you for that. I really believe that. That's beyond politics. So, the bottom line is I want to defend these people. I certainly want to hold them accountable for what they want to spend, but at the end of the day, when we get there, it's their money. That's for our kids. It's for our teachers. It's for our principals in the audience. To give that money back to the town just as a thank you, and today's point, that is meeting them halfway. You don't have a conciliatory or a better relationship with somebody that never meets you halfway. That's just my experience in my life and what I do for work. If you have a compromise, that means both sides are meeting you. If one side is always doing the compromising and giving back and never hearing anything the other way, except maybe after the fact telling the superintendent, like last year, to cut the budget even further, it doesn't seem like a good relationship to me. That seems like a bad relationship. So if we want to have a better relationship, then I say that we need to get tough and say, You know, we're the Board of Ed members, and we're looking after our education budget. And if you want to help us, town councilors, then let's work together, but show us that you're working with us first. Let's work together then.
Thank you, Rob and Mark. Appreciate your comments. In terms of my position, in terms of where I feel about this, I'm not totally comfortable in taking this totally out. And so I would like to see at least half of it left behind. And we're all sitting here saying, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen when we go forward in the committee. We don't know what's going to happen next year. And I think if we take the whole thing out, I just don't think that's a good idea. And I would prefer to see at least half of it left in that line item, and we can vote on it. Because I don't think there's more discussion that needs to be said in terms of where we need to go. I'll let you talk, but just let me finish here. I've talked to other people in terms of other boards. I know that they don't have it in there. I know there's a lot of discussion going around in terms of what the governor's doing. But for our town, rather than taking it out, I know the discussion about the town council, and as you're all talking about this board and what our responsibilities are, I think it is responsible if we leave at least half of it in. And I'll let you speak.
So where are we going to get the other half then? If we take half out, where do you suppose we'd get the other half?
I don't understand your question. What do you mean,
So if-
where are we going to get the other?
You suggested, you mentioned, said that you'd like to take half out.
Hey, you're good.
So you mentioned that you would like to take half out.
Right, so instead of it being...
I understand that, and I know what half is. So where is the half going to come from if we have to put it back in the budget?
The other half.
The other half? Where's it coming from?
The teacher pension line?
Yes.
Where's the other half going to come from? So we're at 524,216 now.
Right.
And we're going to take half of it out.
Right.
We're going to leave half of it.
So if the budget comes through and the governor says we need $524,216, where's it coming from?
Where's the other half coming from?
Where's the other half coming from?
Well, that's something that we all would have to, before the district.
Your mic's not on.
That's the district and for us to figure out. But I think right now, I'm not comfortable with taking the whole thing out. So right now, it's either the whole thing out or the whole thing in. And Deb has proposed that we leave half of it in.
So I understand
You're
that.
asking me a question.
Yeah, so I understand that, right? That's where the whole would come from. So if we removed it all, the same place that you think the half's going to come from, the whole's going to come from. That's all I'm getting at. That's what I'm trying to, so you want to take half out. I understand that. I believe me, I know what that means. But wherever that half comes from, the whole's going to come from too. And oh, by the way, taxpayers don't get hit if we take out the whole. So the number, whether it's half or whole, still comes from the same place. And the money's there. It's not like we are going to have to remove $524,000 from education and lay off teachers or anything like that. That's not, we talked about that last week. That's not the case. So wherever you think half's coming from, that's where the whole's going to come from.
Understanding though, Mark, when you're talking about where the whole is going to come from, or where is the other half going to come from? So that's what I'm not clear on.
Okay. If, for argument's sake, if we take out $250,000, right, and we go forward with $250,000, okay? And the budget comes next month, let's say, and says, West Hartford, you owe us $524,216, but we only budgeted $250,000. So in our budget, we only have $250 to pay that. We are going to have to come up with another $250,000 to make us whole to pay the entire $500,000. I'm saying if you remove the $250 and we go forward with a $250 budget, where is the money going to come from to make us whole? And I'm telling you, it's the same place it's coming from to make us whole if we remove everything.
So I get what you're saying, and so in response, the answer is that if we do have to come up with another $250,000 or $270,000, we might need to make cuts, but at least we will only need to cut $250,000 or $270,000 as opposed to finding $524,000. So the proposal is one that puts us in a balance between putting more onus on our taxpayers and potentially being caught completely unprepared for what we might maybe see. You know, we can look at the tea leaves all we want, and we all know the appropriations budget's going to come out at the end of April, first week of May. But the reality is, until the budget passes through both chambers and is signed by the governor, and that might not happen until June, we won't actually know. There's a lot of work that gets done after even the appropriations budget. So this is just a way to try to find a balance between being caught completely unprepared and being, partially asking to have some of this in there so that we can be ready just in case. I mean, you could say, I have $20 in my wallet. That doesn't mean I also have another $20 in my wallet, right? Not in my wallet. But we don't know that. And I think that we need to be really careful if we're saying that we are giving back $700,000 a year to the town on average, then I think that implies that we're over budgeting by $700,000 a year. And I don't think we really are. I really don't think we are. I think we're budgeting as conservatively as we can and finding efficiencies when possible, and then we've ended up with a little bit of extra money in a $170 million budget. That's not actually that much extra money. So I think we just need to be really careful talking about the potential for having leftover money every year. We don't know that that's going to happen. So again, that's why I would recommend we leave in at least half, just to be prepared, just in case.
You might not want me to go. I'm really sorry, fellow Democrats, but I have to say that Mark's argument persuaded me. If this is, whatever increase we put in goes into the mill rate. If we don't put in an increase, then it doesn't go into the mill rate. I am worried if we take this out, if the town asks us to cut more, then we're in trouble. But I agree that in most cases, not because we're over budgeting, but because, in fact, things never work out the way you plan, we are going to have extra money. And in that sense, we could just as well use that money for our own purposes if this is what happens, then give it back to the town. So I have to say I'm really sorry, but I've kind of shifted my position. So, sorry.
Thanks, appreciate that, Rob. I would like to go back to Mark and Rob and something you said, and it's been a little bit of time. And I was hesitant to ask this, so please assume positive intent here. When you say that this money, this $524,000, if we give it back to the town, it goes in a black hole. It doesn't go to the teachers and the principals, to the kids. Do I then assume that these other three items here, you're ready to give to the you've now got $524,000. Are you then ready to vote for keeping these next three items in? Because it sounds like you're saying you want to do things with that money for the teachers in the towns, and I'm not sure that I'm hearing that properly. So I hope that makes sense.
Great question. So I don't want to confuse things. I think what that does is commingles kind of the conversation too much. I'm happy to debate each of those line items individually, but I really just want to focus on the teacher pension line item. And kind of to Deb's point, I was also waiting. And I feel like your perspective is just different than mine, that it's like there's only one way to skin this cat. And it's just repeating what I said earlier, that, if we do end up having some sort of amount, and actually, to reiterate what Mark said, Carol, like when you're like, well, what, I actually liked what you said better. where you're like, well, we're going to have to figure it out. We're going to have to get together, and ideally we would have that good relationship with the town to figure out where the money's going to come from. So whether we put 260 or 0 or 100, whatever, if we're short of that 524, then you're right. It's the same thought process. It's the same answer. So if we're only taking half, why take anything? Because we're still going to have to figure out where the money's coming from regardless. And so to your point, that doesn't mean that we have to immediately go to Tom and say cut. Again, I'll say what I said earlier, because I think it's important for us as the 7, we should support our superintendent. Maybe fight is too strong a language for you. It's just my nature, I guess. But we should try and work with the town. I agree with you. If for some reason they're not wanting to work with us, then you're right. Then maybe we take some different tactics. But I don't, at least from my perspective, immediately think, well, if we're on the hook for 260 or 524, we got to go to Chip and Tom and be like, cut. That's the last place I want to go. I want to go to the town and go to that, whatever you want to call it, black hole. What it is, folks, is it's the rainy day fund. Just like the state of Connecticut finally has one again. It's a little known fact. I didn't know it for years, but every town, if they're smart, has a rainy day fund. And it's one of the ways that the town of West Hartford has such a great bond rating is because of what we have. I'm not saying that fund should be 0. And that money should always go back to the taxpayers. That would be fiscally irresponsible. But I'm just saying that it's a decent number in that it's for rainy days. This, to me, is a rainy day type thing, so that if we got hit, then we would make up for it from that surplus this year. And then next year when we sit around this table, well, then we have to have a different conversation. But to Mark's point, why put the burden on the taxpayers and then potentially just be giving more money back to the town to put into that rainy day fund when it's already there? There's no reason to think that, well, the only option is to go with Tom and say, you got to cut. Because I actually think that's the last thing that would happen. I really think in reality, in practicality, that is never going to happen. It is just too easy to say, we'll put the line item in there because, then you feel like there's no problem, like it's covered. I actually believe the money is there, folks. The money is there. If we want to give $260 extra into this budget, to Dave's point, then let's do something that they can use it with it. Instead of just putting it in there to something that's going to get washed away into this surplus fund. I'd rather give it to them.
So just to wrap things up on this, I think we've been good stewards. And I don't think we've over budgeted. I think we've budgeted very appropriately and very over the years with Chip and Tom's and everybody's budget that they put forward. So I don't think the over budget, the $700,000, I don't want to mistake people saying that that's what I'm talking about. But as good stewards that we have for the last 10 years, we should relish that we've come up with responsible budgets and that we have, instead of taking that money and zeroing it out and buying Tom a Ferrari and things like that, we've actually given it back to the town, and we've been good stewards, and we've done that year after year after year, and I think we will continue to do that. It's not something I'm looking to zero out because we can't, unforeseen circumstances when we used to have the highs and lows even in healthcare. We were worried about those, and those were big numbers. You guys, some may even remember. So, as a trophy, if you will, to our stewardship over the last 10 years, this would be a trophy to our taxpayers and giving them back the $524,000 because we have been responsible stewards over the last 10 years. And then this, when we have a discussion on this, you know what? We've been pretty good for 10 years, and we will continue to be pretty good, but this is a number I can live with taking out because of what we've done in the past, and we will continue to move forward with that. So I'm just, maybe looking at it that way, saying, listen, you know what? We've been pretty darn responsible for the last 10 years, and we will continue to be responsible, but here's an opportunity to take out and put some less burden on the taxpayers. So I think, our history almost says that, you know what, this is the time we can do it. Because that number isn't, special ed teachers, and it's not security. It's not a bus. It's not, it's not iPads in the classroom. It's not books in the classroom. It's not affecting the classroom. And if you've always heard me say, and I said it last week, if you give me something that is going to, a budget number that goes into the classroom that will affect and have a return on investment, I'll vote for it, even if it's an increase. This doesn't go into the classroom. And if we put it back in June, July, it won't affect the classroom.
I don't want to interrupt debate. I just have a process piece. So the way I would do this when you want to go to vote on it, just in terms of the 524,216's been raised, I'd vote on that amount, and then Deb, you could introduce, I move to add in 250,000 back into the budget at that point. That would be the way I would go about this, just to keep the process clean and documented.
Discussion? Lorna, did you have anything to weigh in on?
I'm listening to it all, and I've been neutral only because my thought is recognizing that this money is going to have to be paid either now or in the future, and just trying to be responsible and proactive in whatever decision is made in regard to the line item. I certainly, hearing the discussion and the debate in terms of how it's impacting the taxpayers now if it were to stay in. I certainly hear that, but I also hear the argument if we were to remove all of it, or rather just remove half of it, how that is giving us some cushion just in case, because things are still up in the air. I think a lot of what we're talking about is dealing with the what-ifs, because nothing has been officially decided and voted on at the Capitol. So it's a bit of a gambling bit, which I don't feel comfortable with that piece, and just wanting to make a sound decision. So I think from what I'm hearing from all of us here, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think for the most part, all of us are not in favor of keeping all of the amount in. Am I correct, fellow colleagues? Okay, so all of us are in agreement with not keeping it all in. It's just a matter of removing all of it or half of it.
So what I'd like to do is to vote yay or nay on taking the entire amount out of $524,216. So all in favor of taking the entire amount?
Sorry. If we do that, then I could then make another motion to put money back in. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'll just repeat so that it's clear. All in favor of taking the entire amount out of $524,216, vote yay.
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 Okay, and
What was that? That's to remove that. Okay, so I heard a lot of yays.
Yeah.
on the amount to be taken out. So, but let me be,
All those opposed. You just said all those.
I'm sorry. And then once that happens, you're going to amend, because that's already been voted on, so how?
A new motion.
It's okay, yeah. She'll make. Yeah, one of the things people don't talk about is you can add into the budget. It happened about 8 years ago with the special education position, so by all means. So voting to remove this just removes it for now, with the understanding, based on the debate you've had, that Deb's about to introduce a motion to add in 250,000 or whatever the amount is, and then you'd vote on that separately.
Okay. All right, so I'll be included with that last one as a yay to take the 524,216 out. And now Deb's,
No, you still
oh.
need to, all those opposed, to see if anybody.
Oh, I'm sorry. All those opposed? Hearing no opposition, the yeas have it to remove the 524,216 out. And now Deb will make a motion.
I love how that was unanimous. I make a motion that we add 250,000 into our budget to go towards a potential teacher pension contribution.
Did you want 274?
No, I'd like to do 250.
Okay, a
It's
second.
a nice round number.
Second.
So that motion has been moved and second. Discussion? Any questions? No discussion and questions are needed. So we'll put it to a vote. All in favor of this $250,000 in for the two teachers' pension, vote yay, and all those opposed would vote no. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 And all those opposed? Nay. No.
Nay.
Both hands.
Hands.
4-3. And so the motion carries. Okay. Next item is the World Language Department Supervisors. I don't need a motion. So there's discussion and questions on this item, whether to remove it or to keep it in.
Well, for 2 years, we've had one individual filling in, doing the job of two. It involves running all over town, high mileage on your car. If you think about it, you know, we talk about each one of our schools is unique. It's special. They've got their own personality. And we've got one individual now who's going to each one of these different schools, trying to see how a language teacher fits into that individual school with, you know, those unique circumstances. We learned the Wolcott Way the other week, you know. It's not like that at other schools. Maybe Bugby, just as an example, they have a different program. And that's not an easy thing for someone to do. We have asked a lot of this individual who is filling in, doing a bang-up job, doing the job of two people. And I just do not think that it's justified that we continue to ask that. We're at a point where we need to thank this world language supervisor that we have, and we need to fill that second slot.
I agree that the schools are different, and that's a good argument. My feeling is there's one person who is overseeing 53 people, and that is just not tenable. I mean, we've asked them to do it for 2 years, and I understand why, but now that we're not talking about having to cut $7 million from the budget or whatever the last dire crisis was, it seems to me it's just inappropriate to ask somebody to supervise that many people, period. It's just not it's not good management. And so I'm in favor of it just because the workload is so excessively large if we don't.
I, too, am in favor for the reasons that colleagues have shared, and also just reflecting on conversations had at the table. And, Tom, I'm also recalling a response you made just in terms of just teacher morale and that bit and how that maybe is impacted with there just being one supervisor. And I think it's important to be proactive in a measure, and I think by adding this role, it will do that, versus assuming because things are going well, they'll continue to go well, and then what if something doesn't go well? Then we're in crisis mode, and now we have to be reactive. And so for all that has been said, I am in favor of this position remaining within the budget.
I know I'm losing this one, but I just kind of tickled my fancy with the morale thing, because I take that stuff really to heart. And if you remember, I think it was at the first budget hearing, I asked the question, you know, what are the top things when we were having this discussion? Like, you know, if you ask the teachers, what is the first couple things they'd want if they could get something? You know, like, would the first thing be a supervisor? The first thing was time. That's the answer. The answer was the first thing they would take is more time. I don't know how a supervisor, and I'm not saying that you guys aren't right. I think you have valid points, but I don't know that the supervisor is going to improve the morale the way you think it is. I think it's a time issue, and it's having the type of support that they need to be better at their job, which might not always translate to a supervisor, just based on stuff I've heard anecdotally. Nothing against the supervisor folks out there. You do a yeoman's work. But teachers need time, and they need resources, which kind of is the same thing as time. So I get it. I manage people for a living. I don't disagree with Cheryl that managing 50-something people is a lot. But she's been doing that job for a couple of years now, and I don't think it's unheard of in the managing world that people manage that number of people. There are actually people I think that manage way more than 50-something people. So I guess that's just the devil's advocate thing to say to you, is that, if we were, again, going to allocate money to something, I'd rather it be to some way hit the things that teachers, the frontline folks, I'm always thinking about them, what they would most prefer. And I just don't think the supervisor is it. And I do think people in certain industries and in certain situations do manage this many people.
I appreciate what you shared. I just want to clarify one thing. If I'm not mistaken, the position as is now, in terms of this one person supervising everyone, has been by default because there was a freeze, correct?
Yeah, the position was never actually cut. The position was frozen 2 years ago. Then last year it was added back into the budget, but then the town council cut the budget basically again, and so we had to cut, I think, 200,000 or something, 300,000 last year after the budget had passed.
So going back 2+ years, the intent has been for it to be 2 supervisors.
Yeah, we had a freeze on where we weren't hiring that year that we laid off or eliminated 17 positions. Yeah.
I just say that just so we're clear in terms of job description. It wasn't as though this person applied and was assigned this job with the assumption being, moving forward, you indefinitely will be having all of the responsibilities that you currently have.
I just want to respond to that real quick. That kind of, and don't take this the wrong way, but that's to me the argument of like, well, it's always been this way, so that's what we should go back to. So the problem I have with those type of comments is that then you never actually get maximum efficiency. The only way we ever lose people is through retirement. That's making it sound like the organization is always humming at its peak efficiency. And no offense to anybody in this room, because I know you guys work really, really hard, but when you get to an organization this size, I think it's hard to say that you're always going to have the exact right number of people in the right number of positions. And to the point that you were just making that, Tom had to back it out last year. I mean, why didn't we keep it in? Why didn't we cut from somewhere else? If it was so damn necessary, why didn't we say, fine, let's find the money somewhere else? Because obviously the person's doing the job and it's working the way it is. On the ground, in reality, day to day, that's working. That's how it is. So we can go back and add the position in. You guys will do that. That's fine. But it doesn't mean that that's the way it always has to be. You can change. You can change.
And I agree. I just want to make sure I'm quoted or what I'm saying is being inferred correctly. I'm not at all saying, let's go back to the way it's been, that's how it's always been. Not at all. I'm recognizing that the way that it was for a reason, and that being justifiable for us to continue moving forward in that same vein. Again, this person is doing a lot in terms of their responsibilities, not only in terms of supervising, but also evaluating. We don't know, we have scheduled evaluations, I imagine, and then there may be crisis situations, and then that person in terms of their own functionality as well. So I'm not at all saying let's just go back to what we did. I'm saying let's be responsible and proactive moving forward, not only for the sake of the supervisor, but the effectiveness of the supervisor will trickle down and influence those that this person is supervising as well. And so that spreads out and impacts a large amount of individuals, which ultimately impacts our children.
We just have totally different viewpoints on this.
We can agree to disagree. All right.
Tom, I'm going to put you on the spot, and I don't want to, but town budget, mayor comes back to you and says, we got to cut $400,000. Where's it going to come from? And I know that, yeah, you don't even have to answer that question because I don't want, it's not a fair question, really. But that is a potential, this was eliminated. That is a potential landmine, and I asked you a question, but I don't need you to answer it.
But if they come back and ask us, guess what's going to get cut? Teacher pension, right? And some other number. So the tea leaves at the state, and you know, and I'll just use this for argument's sake, for illustrative purposes, when 168 towns, I know there's some out there, that don't think that the teacher pension's important, but we do, and I congratulate Tom for being a leader on that, because that's what he needs to do. But when it comes to cuts, that's where it's going to happen, and then potentially we'd have to cut some more. And this has been cut in the past. And it's a fair, you know, Tom, you can answer this question. How often has the town come back and asked us to cut our budget over the last 5 years? Or since you've been superintendent? Even.
Pretty sure every year. Yeah.
I
I'd
remember
say-
a 1.1 increase, like 1.2, that was a very low increase. That was
Yeah.
like when I first joined. But so, for the most part, often is a good.
More than half, yeah.
So I just want you to think about that, okay? When you want to cut half on a teacher pension and things like that, and when there's other jobs out or other positions, that if we have to come back and cut, where do you do it?
And just to clarify, not to answer. No, I understand completely. It's kind of the option of firing somebody that's in a position or not filling a position. So I don't know if it's as much about value or if, I mean, listen, if a position isn't necessary, it's not in the budget. But assuming all those positions that are necessary are filled, and then I'm come back and it's April and May, well, that's the time when you're hiring administration. And you're not really hiring administration in August and September. People aren't going place to place at that point, at that level. So that's a factor in it. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I just want to clarify that the reasoning isn't necessarily a value judgment. It's a open position judgment.
Understood, and hence why I really don't, you know, put you on a spot, but, well, no. More often than not, the town has come to ask us to cut. And I just ask you to think about those things. You voted on half of a teacher pension, and, you know, that may come to fruition whether you like it or not. And I will take no glory in it, believe me, because that's just the process. But these are the things you have to think about. And when I've been on long enough to know that it happens quite often.
Again, I am taking it, no, I understand that what I'm saying is not going to be popular, but I totally agree with you, except for me, my thinking is they're going to, if they are more likely to ask us to cut than not, no matter what we do, it would be very nice to have a little bit of cushion, rather than, say, cutting this and then what are we going to do? So I shouldn't assume that the town is going to cut us, but since that's been the pattern, that's part of what I've been thinking about too.
Well, Mark and Cheryl have been on a roll tonight, agreeing with one another. I just want to say that I am in support of leaving the World Language Department supervisor in, and that really comes from the presentation that we did over the board workshop in terms of explaining to us the responsibilities of that particular supervisor and what she does. More to some of the points that were discussed around, but my concern is, and trust me, I get it, I'm in state government, and we've probably been cut more than any other institution or agencies or what have you, private sector and whatnot. And yes, it's true that you do have to do more than one and more than two or three people's job, but my concern is our students. So we have to be careful when we have one person and that one person is charged with a number of responsibilities, because when that individual get burned out, because they're human, and sometimes it's human more times than not, we also have to deal with our own self-care. And from what you all explained in terms of the certifications that are involved, you can't necessarily go to a number of other people and say, I want you to take over because so-and-so is going to be out for a period of time, or whatever the case may be. I just think we start to walk down a little slippery slope there. And I get it, because since I've been on the board, we have, cuts. We have received, when the town comes back and say, no, we want you to do further cuts. But I have to argue to keep this particular line item in, because it's one individual who is charged with a number of responsibilities, and at the same time, this individual is expected to work at her particular maximum each and every day.
Carol, I just want to clarify. I agree with you. When I said I was worried about the town cutting, what I meant was, I think we should leave this in because I think it's really important. When they come back and ask us to cut, well, then this may be on the table again. But I don't think the answer is to cut now because of that. So I as I said in the beginning, I completely agree that this is a necessary position.
Just very briefly, I think this is one of those positions that is underrated in its ability to impact a student's ability to learn. I think from my experience, a department supervisor is not only tasked with supervising and evaluating, but also coaching teachers on how to improve their lesson delivery, how to improve the way that students are learning in their classrooms. And it can be particularly important for newer teachers to make sure that before they develop habits in the classroom, they're developing the right habits that are rooted in evidence-based practice and that have demonstrated success for our students. And I think it would be responsible of us to put this position in, and I would argue to fight to keep this position no matter what happens after tonight, because I think that this position is that important for our students' learning of world languages.
I just wanted to ask a question, because I know we've been talking about this one supervisor, and I wanted to know, has the board received feedback from the supervisor that the amount of work they have is too much, or has there been?
That would be to me. Yes, I have.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand your points and everything. Where were you last year? I mean, I just don't understand. I mean, this is like we were sitting here last year and this was going in, and then I do have a recollection that when the mayor told our superintendent to cut $300,000 from the budget, when we had to come back and amend, there was like just went through and we just cut the position. So I just don't know what's changed last year versus this year that all of a sudden you're saying like this absolutely has to stay in and we can't do it because it wasn't there last year. So I understand your point of views and I get it. I just don't understand where there wasn't support for it last year when it had to be put on the chopping block, whatever you want to say, eliminated for at least another year because of what the town instructed us to cut. So I'm just wondering why all of a sudden it seems different. So, but we can vote.
All right, so, World Language Department Supervisor, why don't we go with all in favor of taking it out to vote yay and then vote nay. So I'll do that. All in favor of, so all in favor,
Removing it.
all in favor of removing it as it appears now as a cut would say,
Opposed to the cut or opposed to the position?
okay, let me repeat it.
These are potential cuts, so we have to
Right.
vote for the cut.
Right, let me explain it, okay? So what we have on the board now are potential cuts that we discussed at the last board workshop. So right now it stands that the World Language Department Supervisor, which is $140,444, would come out. So if you are in favor of this coming out, you would vote yay. If you're not in favor of it coming out, you would vote nay. Is that clear to everybody?
I lost it. I wish for this position to remain.
So you would vote nay,
Thank you.
okay? All right, let's try this again. All in favor of the World Language Department Supervisor coming out, vote yay. All in favor? And all opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Thank you. Vote carries. The next item on the list is the IT staff, which is $78,966. Coming out. We need to have some discussion or some questions. Who has any questions?
Mike night on Mondays at the Elbow Room. If you're there, I'm
Just a quick one. Yeah, just very briefly, you can, Tom or whoever is appropriate, can you give us a 10-second summary of the need for this position? Just refresh my memory.
Yeah, the number of our help desk tickets has doubled over the past 3 years. This actually restores us to 06, 07 levels in the IT department. And with the number of devices that we have, that's exploded. Basically, we've never officially become a one-to-one district where we give everybody something, but that's what we are in reality in the schools. So just with the workload and the other piece that we discussed last week with Chip leaving his position, that position will become far more of a business manager and not the kind of report development that Chip's done in the past. So.
And maybe I'm getting too much in the weeds, but I have an idea about some of the help desk requests at my agency. But can you give me on average, like what do those help desk requests cover?
Yeah, there was I think 6,000 last year, and that ranges from the internet being down to my screen being down to it could be as from a large scale outage, and it could also be running a program. So actually, you'll see help desk where we need professional development, and actually somebody going in and talking to staff about how do we use this new program they're going also. So there's plenty of it that's just pure fixes, but there's also others of it that is both maintenance, ads, but also PD that goes along with it.
If I can also add, when we brought this person on also, you think about when we brought this person on, it was also to help with the security systems that we've put in place and really put on the back of IT. We now have cameras running in all of our buildings. These servers need to be maintained on a daily basis with IT. When software goes down, we're also integrated with the badging system in all of the buildings as well. So we've added over the last 2 or 3 years a significant impact on IT staffing with that, and so this represents that as well.
And I forwarded the memo to all of you, and will post publicly that Jared wrote. If there's an area that is really, I've got to give Jared Moran kudos to finding efficiencies from. Well, the state's provided this, to what Rob said. We've done this. This is the way we've done it for years. Jared has changed a lot of what we've done for years, how we access it, how we've privatized certain things, how we've taken ownership of certain things. So he has done a tremendous amount during his time here to make our IT department efficient. And when I was principal, the number one complaint I got was about IT. When I was first assistant superintendent, that was the number one complaint we got. We actually spent $100,000 on a program, on a outside consultancy to look at our IT needs into the future. That was in 2010-11, and since then, we've invested millions of dollars, but it is not the source of complaint that's been in the past, and so much that is because of Jared and his staff, so.
That IT department was with the Abacus, was it? Yeah, guys, back when you were a principal. I think I brought this one up too. It's just one of those things where, and I mentioned it last time, when you come from a private industry and you try to automate everything, right, and make things automated, automation helps you. I understand, I read the memo. I think Jared does yeoman's work. Always has a smile on his face. So, except for tonight, maybe. Except for tonight, yeah. With a few of us up here, yeah. So and I always thought that automation should help. And then I said before, we talked about being a paperless society back when the internet came out, and all of us could remember when it did. And so it's just that's the perspective I'm coming from. Understand we have more devices. In fact, I want to say I was on the board when we first introduced iPads, and it was I voted for that. We spent money, and went into the classrooms, and I was all for that. So it just, I'm coming from a perspective of automation. That we always talk about. Automation is going to replace jobs. And that is probably the future, and that's the point I'm coming through, is that I think that this is although we have a more robust and a larger IT presence, I think I'd rather spend money on automation and more automation because that doesn't represent a pension, that doesn't represent a sick call, doesn't represent all that. So that's where I'm coming from.
For a vote? All right, so on this one, same thing. All in favor of IT coming out will vote yay. All in favor of IT staying in is going to vote nay. No, did I say that right? Yes. Okay, so let's vote. All in favor of the IT staff coming out, say aye. Okay, and all in favor of the IT staff staying in, vote yay.
Wait,
Nay, sorry. All in favor of the IT staff staying in are going to vote nay to it coming out. So, nay.
No. To it coming out.
That's correct. That's right. Okay. Last item on the list is the supplies. In the amount of $113,503 as a cut to this budget. We need to have some discussion or some questions, or no? Mark? There you go. Oh.
I say one block of instruction I'll spend money on a block of instruction on this thing. So I've got to tell you, I've got to raise my hand and say I need more information on this. I know Rob brought this up, but for some reason, I'm having a hard time remembering what the argument was, and I need more information. That's all, because for whatever reason, I just don't remember our discussion and roundtable. So if we can just briefly do that again.
Okay, so, and I'll defer some to Paul and Chip if they want to add in. This is the supply budget. This is the pure increase in the supply budget spread out over 16 schools. As we discussed in the past, this would be the first increase in the supply budget in 3 years. And in fact, not just an increase, but 3 years ago, we cut the supply budget by
I think you said 8%.
8.4%.
In 15-16, we increased it by 1%. In 16-17, you increased it by 0.4%. In 17-18, you decreased it by 8.4%, and 18-19, you increased it, you held it zero, it was flat. So overall, that's an average of 8.487. It's a 7% decrease over 3 years, so an average decrease of 2 to 3% a year. And so this is a 1.5% increase.
Yeah, so in terms of the value of the increase, really, it's twofold. It's inflationary, and it's essentially to try to help support schools, making up the difference of those losses or the hard freezes over the course of the year, over the course of the last several years. But in terms of how the budget is spent, as Tom said, it's spread across the 16 schools, and it essentially represents the operating budget with which our schools are conducting the day-to-day operations. A lot of your expendables, a lot of your durables are going to be coming out of that. Things, as simple as paper and markers and things of that nature. May also include funds for things related to trips, things of that nature. But it is getting into the business of kind of the day-to-day education of children and the building of school budgets. So books that wear out, that get replaced, that kids read every couple of years. We're replenishing classroom libraries. We're replenishing collections. Just school business kind of things.
Yeah, I'm just running numbers through my head, that's all. So that's all.
I'm also running numbers, so if I understand it correctly, this is roughly $7,000 per school. It seems to me to be entirely within reason.
Well, it's actually half that, because half those schools are part of the department, part of the budget. There's also the departments like plant facilities, IT,
I see.
curriculum instruction. So it's not just schools.
Okay, so we're talking about $4,000 or $5,000 a school.
Correct.
I mean, it seems to me that is, at least my position is that is entirely reasonable, so I would support it.
Okay, yeah, just be the bad guy. So I'll just turn your comment right around on you and say, well, if it's 3,000 or 4,000 in a school, then why do they need it? It's just it's the opposite point of view. Right, so I'm not turning it on her. I'm just saying I'm turning the viewpoint around. Sorry if I didn't say the words come out well. I'm just I'm a conservative with budgets. I just and since this is the last item, I just wanted to make a general comment that I'm not against spending money on a department supervisor position or an IT staff position. Everything I voted no on tonight, I'm not in theory against, but at some point you have to say no. You have to make the tough decisions. $169 million budget is a ginormous budget. Just like the 164 or 5, whatever it was last year, was a ginormous budget. And I just keep thinking ahead, every year we're adding $4 million. We're going towards a $200 million budget. I don't know how that's an affordable budget for our town. I don't know how this is an affordable budget for our town. So, I would like to say that there are other things that we could adjust the budget to. See, I just don't like to use the C word. But I don't think there's any support for any of it anyway. So, these things were line itemed out as I thought decent things to have a discussion about. And Shirley, I don't disagree with you that you're if it's to Chip's point, $3,000 or $4,000 a school, you're seems reasonable. Yeah, somebody's got to say no sometimes and say, well, no, you're just not going to get it. I understand that there was a cut before and it's only a very small percentage increase. I'm just not a fan of talking about percentage increases because it really masks the real number. Anybody can say a 2% increase is small, but when you talk about the size budget we're having, it's real money. So at some point you have to say that's the town's money, it's the taxpayers' money, that's our money. At some point we have to try and say we can't do everything for everyone and that you're going to have to spend what you had last year because that's all we can afford because we're already increasing over $4 million. That's a really big number. 2.89% sounds real cuddly, but 4.7 million to me just sounds like a ginormous number. That's just my perspective. I will not be on this board long enough to reach a $200 million figure. Thank God. Okay. You should go to open mic night too, because that's a good joke. Yeah, I mean, and kind of to the point earlier about like the extra set. I mean, I would love to give that man extra money, because like I don't think we should forget that. Why, like, you know, I sit here saying no. So many people come at that man, and maybe his staff too. I don't know, and say more. I don't want you to think I didn't hear that, and then I didn't remember it. So I appreciate the position that he's in, but I also appreciate the position that I'm in. And so, you know, I think sometimes you just have to say no, and people will get by.
I just have a question about when we're talking about supplies. I know in here and like in my own experience in the classroom, I've heard about teachers that like use their own money to buy things in the classroom. And this isn't like a pointed question. I just want to know from you or anyone who knows about it, how what's the percentage of teachers would you say have talked about using their own money to buy supplies, and does that seem to be an overwhelming amount of feedback?
It is an easy answer, and Rob's exactly right. It's 100% of teachers.
Great question, by the way.
100% of people. Yeah, I mean, this is the Kleenex. You know, this is that kind of supply that we look at. But yeah, absolutely, there is no question. Every teacher, not just here, but I think across our country, ends up investing not just in themselves, but in their personal life. And it's most often things nobody would ever find out about. It's snacks for a kid. It's an extra bowl of animal crackers. It's things that people don't know about, and it's something we should be thankful for. I'm glad you brought it up.
And I don't think this will change that 100% of the time. Great question, though. You know, I think that's the troubling part, is that, especially being married to one of those, like, yeah, I mean, I see it firsthand. I'm sure Dave could probably speak to it too. The markers, the folders. I mean, that's just what's so amazing about teachers. You know, I mean, how many other people go to work in various fields and say, well, I'll buy my own pens, or I'll bring in snacks for. Actually, I think that probably does happen, but I think it's a really great point and a really great question. Like, I wish we could reduce that number down to 0, or even just by half. But those people are so dedicated. If they see a need and they're not getting it, they're going to spend the money, no matter how much we put in that line item. So, great question.
Robert, I want to touch on a comment you made, and I know you've made it in the past, that you thought that these items were good to have a discussion about. I feel we have had a discussion, a lively discussion. We've even seen at least one opinion change publicly. I think there are some other ones, you know, that we definitely gave it some deep thought on the other side. I think, you know, just because we have a discussion and it doesn't change the outcome of a vote to somebody else's side, it doesn't mean we didn't discuss it in detail. I heard comments about our last workshop, and we spent a lot of time on something, and you know, that's what we're doing. We're having a good discussion, and it's good to get the thoughts out so that everybody understands why we're voting the way we do. And I want to thank everyone on the board and our student representatives as well, and Tom, and everybody at the table for the input. It's valuable in order for us to make these decisions.
Dave, I've got a comment, but it just, I agree with you, but you made that comment because someone said that our discussion wasn't, I mean, I'm just worried, where'd that come from? Because I thought we were having, just because a vote doesn't go my way, I'm not going to sit here and pout, and it's just a matter of the nature of the beast. So I'm wondering where that comment came from. You said you heard something, and I hadn't heard that. So I thought, regardless of the outcome of the votes, I appreciate every one of your opinion. And I don't think I've said, I hope, and if I've done something that I don't respect that opinion, then tell me, but that's what I thought you were getting at.
Oh, no, thank you. If I just may address that. This is actually someone in the viewing audience who mentioned it, that we spent a lot of time on a certain item that they thought would have been resolved early on in the discussions. It was just feedback from the public. Thanks. It was not someone on the board.
Perfect. All right. I just want to preserve my little innocence that I still have left, I guess.
So I appreciate you clarifying, because I agree with you 100%, and it's easy to throw from the cheap seats a comment like that. And we all are here for many hours, unpaid. So I guess I can't go to open mic night. But anyway, so no, I think we're on the same page, and it is unfortunate when someone makes a comment that's maybe uninformed, or everyone's entitled to their opinion. Maybe they think we do go off on rails too far, but I do think that we do try to give everything a thorough review. Just that review sometimes is on different perspectives, but we certainly talk it out more than I would like. But I appreciate everyone's point of view.
Yeah, I just was responding, Dave. I did have had a comment too. So I also want to tell the viewing audience and our fine administrators and teachers that are in the audience that because I cut doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that I don't respect each and every one of you in your position. And if you have heard me speak at your convocation and at Hall's graduation, I think you know exactly that and how much I do respect the jobs you guys do. I've said it publicly in front of a lot of people. To come up here and not have dialogue and not have discourse or a discussion on a budget and just pass any budget that is presented in front of you, and I'm not, by no means, this is illustrative purposes only, but by passing any budget that's in front of you, and not my colleagues here that would do that, would be irresponsible. And not to have dialogue and not to talk about these very difficult decisions and talk about it. I thought there was potentially one very easy one up there, and it became a little more difficult. I'm fine with it. I understand why. It didn't affect any teachers, but that's fine, and I respect everyone's opinion about that. I just want to make sure that, we got elected to make tough decisions, not easy ones, because if easy ones, then you wouldn't need us. It would be a budget presented by Tom or any superintendent, and it would get passed. But that's not why we're here. So these very difficult decisions, and I've been on the board long enough where we had to look for some very deep cuts, and it wasn't fun. I didn't have fun at it. My colleagues didn't have fun. But unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast. I heard some applause out there, and I encourage that. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I don't want this to be bad guy, bad girl, good person, bad person. This is just a matter of trying to be responsible for what values that we each as an individual bring to the table, and making, there's no one here that doesn't want our school systems to succeed. And if you happen to be, again, at any of the times where I spoke publicly, I've always talked about West Hartford and its accolades. And I'm proud to be a resident here. I'm proud to have 3 kids in our school system. And I often argue with the private school parents because of what we offer. And I argue in your behalf. Those people sitting in the audience, I argue in your behalf. And I don't want you to look at this as, what are we, $800,000 that we potentially tried to cut. I had the number written here, $879,000. Doesn't take any value away from what everyone does, including the administrators, Tom. It is something that we have to do. We get elected for our different viewpoints, and that's why we're here. So I hope the audience could respect that, and that by no means do I, and Rob alluded to it, respect anyone less because of a position. And we talked about particular people, not necessarily names attached to them yet. But once they get hired, they'll probably listen to this and, look at us and probably never say hi to me in the hallway ever again. So I just want to know that, we do this on behalf of the town as an individual. That's what my vote is for. And so I hope there's no hard feelings with anyone out there or here in this room.
Really say that in this position, I've been able to see a lot of things from behind the scenes that I don't get to see. I just go to French class every day. I don't think about the world language department supervisor, and I think something that I hope that I can just express to the board is that about the comment about the dialogue and discussion, maybe it should have been resolved by now. Like, I feel more comfortable and I feel relief that, these things that I now know are so important that do affect me whether I realize it or not, they are being discussed thoroughly. So I think throughout, all to cut or not to cut, like, I am glad that at least we're having these discussions, and it makes me as a student feel better about, going to classroom knowing that there are people who are taking the time and energy to have these difficult conversations. So I guess from the student perspective, that's, how I feel, and I'm glad that we're taking this time.
Discussion on the supplies line item? Okay, so we're ready to vote on this. All in favor of cutting the supply line item by the amount of $113,503 will be yay, and all who are opposed to cutting will be nay. Did I say that clearly? Okay, so all in favor of cutting the supply line item, vote yay.
Yay.
And all who are opposed to cutting the supply line item, vote nay. Nay. Okay.
So now the vote would be about the amendment revised education.
And that,
168,800,600.
based on what Tom said, do I have a motion?
So moved.
And do I have a second? Okay. Do we need any more discussion or questions?
Am I reading that correctly, that now, with our revised budget, the increase is 2.71%?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Or, Mark?
So typically, we go around the table and talk about it. So, again, as an overall budget, I really respect what Tom and his administration put through, Chip and his team, and probably the one-man band there too sometimes, Chip, but I appreciate it, your entire team. It just comes down to, and this doesn't lay solely on the Board of Ed's shoulders. It certainly does not. It's a twofold responsibility with the town council and the board. We often get recognized as one of the best school systems around, certainly in Connecticut, and even ranked nationally. And there's a lot of reasons for it. And one of them are our teachers and administration and the fine staff that we have. The accolades that come to this school system are second to none. And fortunately, you expect it now. It's kind of like the UConn women winning. You just expect them to win all the time. And that's what West Hartford has. And sometimes we get looked at from Hartford because perception versus reality. Perception is, and we found that with our previous governor, that we need big cuts here in West Hartford because West Hartford is at the peak and pinnacle of their success. So they don't need any more money, so we're going to cut them. And on the other hand, you don't necessarily have to throw money at success of education either. And there's perfect examples of schools in Hartford that we can go down and litigate each one of them. But at the end of the day, the town and what we come in on our average taxes, and I said this doesn't be on our own shoulders here at the Board of Ed, but I think at some point we have to look at it deeply and difficultly, and I know it hurts, and I've been through it more than I like about looking at budgets by line item, and that, you know, we had a meeting with town council last week, and Rob stood up, I don't want to speak for him, but talked about, you know, our mill rate going up, and beyond that, I even mentioned the saying, like, you know, what about 1%? What about 2%? Not talking about individual line items, not talking about, you know, cut a fire chief or cut a supervisor or a teacher here or there. But just, you know, 1%, 2% maybe, because, you know, how much longer is this going to be sustainable? There's going to be a tipping point, and I don't know where it is. I do know that given the amount of people that came out for this particular budget, people are satisfied with our particular school budget. I know that the town had some people come out against their particular budget, but people are happy with what's going on in here, West Hartford. But at what point is it sustainable, and when is it going to? I thought a couple of years ago it was going to make a big difference and change, but we saw that the town came out, and, you know, we were talking about $50,000 for one program, and we couldn't even get that through because we had to make hard decisions and cuts, and there wasn't any appetite for that particular position. I understand that, but I'm voting no on this budget tonight because I don't think, and I think it's a very responsible and reasonable, I've said it, reasonable budget going forward. But the fact that, that we as a town have to look at it somehow, and what is going to be sustainable going forward, and what people elect us to do. So I don't want to take up the whole night, so I think that we need to look at this very carefully, and we just, you know, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's exactly what these 2%, 3%, 4% increases are. It's one bite at a time, and the elephant's done. At some point, we have to look at it and figure this out. Tonight's not the night.
Do you want to go next, or Rob, do you want to go?
Are we all talking?
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody can stomach that. I'll just say I'm voting no. You know, and also just in fairness, one bite of an elephant or a donkey, it could be anything, right? So that's not stereotype. So no, Mark's referencing most of you weren't in that room. That's the other thing I don't like about that meeting. Just like going on record, like I wish some people came. You know, like it's so rare that we get together as a council and a board of ed. Maybe part of the problem, to Dave's point, is because it's so rare that it does end up being adversarial because the people don't know each other that well, and it's harder to dislike a friend than it is a stranger. So, yeah. So I have real concerns I'm a small business owner in this town. I have two businesses. You know, I'm in the real estate industry, so I see it firsthand, maybe more than most. So I feel like I really have a hand on the pulse of issues like mill rate increases and affordability. That's just my perspective than a lot of people. And so, you know, for me, it's not, you know, it's not just talking about it. I live it. So I'm concerned, you know, and that's the reason I ran for the Board of Ed, in all honesty, is because I wanted to understand, wanted to know why we spend the money that we spend, and I have learned a lot, and I have a much better understanding. And so I'm not sitting here either like Mark and saying, you know, that this is some repudiation of people's effort or work product. It's not that. It's simply not that. It's simply just saying, you know, I think at some point we have to chart a different course. And it shouldn't just be on the Board of Ed's shoulders. The town should come together as a whole. The council, the board, needs to chart a new course, because those bites, to his analogy, just seem to get bigger and bigger every year. And yeah, we can say that people want to move to this town and they know what they're getting. when they move to this town, they're getting a superior education product, and you get what you pay for. I just feel like sometimes maybe that's ignoring people that don't have the means of people that make those statements. You know, I think sometimes people who make those statements, they have the means, so they don't recognize what it's like when people don't. I sell houses to people over $500,000, and I've sold houses to people for under $100,000. And let me tell you, it's a lot different. And I think the people that are in the less expensive bracket deserve just as much as the people in the higher bracket. And my concern is with these types of increases that those very people that we supposedly are concerned about are simply just going to disappear from this town. And so that's why I'm voting no. Thanks.
Well, I know it'll come as no surprise that I am voting yes. On the budget, because while I totally agree it sounds like a lot of money, I don't see a single place that we could have cut. We looked all over the budget. We talked about everything. Everything that is in this budget, it seems to me, is absolutely necessary. So yeah, of course I wish it were lower, but I don't know what we could cut in order to make that, to make this a more affordable budget. And I think the fact that nobody has come out to say anything means that everybody understands that. Our increase is pretty close to inflation, so it's not actually much more than a roll-forward budget, it seems to me. And anything from this budget, we've been so careful to look at everything, that anything that we take out of this budget would hurt. There's no fat left after all the cutting that we've done in the past few years. So I just think we are elected to keep the school system as absolutely wonderful as we can. And I am so grateful that we have Tom at the helm. I am so sad that Chip is leaving. And I feel like we're doing more with less, and I'm really grateful at how hard everybody is working to make that possible. So I feel like we have, unfortunately, too bare bones a budget, but we can't afford more. But I am proud to say that I am totally in support of the budget as it stands. Joe.
I'm in favor of the budget. I certainly understand that we need to be responsible with how we spend our money, but I think it's also important for us to recognize who the money is for. That is certainly the motivation for myself wanting to be on this board, recognizing the importance of our young people and their education and the quality of their education, and also recognizing that all of us, our whole town, benefits from that. I've shared before, I have yet to see a publication or hear a speech given where our school systems and the quality of the education has not been included in that type of speaking. So we all benefit to many, many degrees. And in terms of the increase and the financial cost that it is to remain in this town, I am a working person. I come from a working class family, and I don't have a great amount of means, but I certainly know the value of education, and that is something that's priceless. And so I think that's something for us to remember as we look at this budget and the investment we're putting on our young people, and how it will be an investment that will pay forward and benefit us all.
I'll be voting for the budget. I think it supports our schools, our teachers, principals, everyone involved. As most of you know, I try every meeting to get out in the audience and greet the folks who took the time to come out and listen to our meetings. It's not the most exciting thing in town. Well, thank you so much. And as I look out and I see the different people I've had the pleasure to meet over the years, I can see all the good work they do at the different schools and where they stand. And thank you all so much. And I hope that this vote today, as we pass this budget, you understand that we do support you, and thank you for the hard work you do each and every day for our children.
Well, there really isn't that much more to add. I'll just echo my colleagues' gratitude to the people who work on behalf of our children and families in this town. This budget reflects our priorities to the best that we can, and good budget ought to pass.
so I won't repeat what everyone has said. However, what I would like to say is, I have had the pleasure of being on this board for 4 years. And during the time that I've been on this board, I've had the ability to visit a number of schools and to speak to a number of administrators and teachers, and really gotten to learn what you do each and every day, and how proud you are of your students and your families and your communities, and how you treat every single student uniquely, and you meet them and you meet their needs where they are. And with this budget allows us to do that each and every day. Of course, we want a bigger budget, reach for a pie in the sky, but we have to be realistic. And it's tough, right? We look at what more cuts can we make. But if we're already at the marrow, it's real difficult to make even deeper cuts. And I get it. I understand my colleagues that are saying, let's be fiscally responsible. I think we are being fiscally responsible, especially with what we have in front of us. Most of this budget is personnel and benefits, and then a smaller portion is around the other remaining things. And I know that a number of you, as was said already, that you go into your pocket and you buy and purchase things. You look out for other students, their families. You even probably come together as groups and figure out how to do more with less. And then you also apply for your grants, and then your grants supplement some of the things that you don't have. So I even appreciate what Megan just said, in terms of sometimes we hear things, but we don't really know the details behind it, what's all involved. So sometimes if you're on the outside looking in and you want to make a cut because of the numbers in front of you, sometimes you have to step back and think about the impact. And with that impact, do we cut off our nose to spite our face? Or do we really look at it deeply and say, is that something that we really want to do? Because will that hurt us somewhere down the road when unexpected things, occur or come up? We have to be able to be prepared for those types of things. We're in this age where different things are becoming priorities. We have our competing priorities around our security, our IT. All of those things cost money, and we look at it in this district how we can do it efficiently. And thank goodness for our superintendent, for our executive team, and the amount of experience that's just sitting at this table that can really delve deeper in terms of what can we do, how can we manage the resources that we have and do so responsibly. So I'm definitely in support of this budget, and I'm very thankful for all of you that are sitting out there this evening, and I'm thankful for those who are at home watching us. And you all are the reason why West Hartford continues to remain as a top district. You all are the reason why people gravitate to this district far and wide. It's hard work, and just as you all said, we have to make tough choices and make tough decisions, but at the end of the day, this is where we are. We still remain top, and you work hard to keep us there. So I'm in support of this. Okay, so now we're going to put this to an official vote. All in favor of the budget, the revised education budget at $168,800,689. Vote aye. Aye. And those who are opposed, vote nay. And thank you, everybody. Thank you for all of you in the audience, and thank you, team, and thank you, Tom. I'm thankful just to be able to sit on this board and to work with all of you. Next item is new business. There isn't any new business. And then we move to staff communication and reports, which is the superintendent's report.
Yeah, I think
Mr.
it's appropriate now that you voted, and it's not about voting yes or no on the budget. I just want to thank the board for the process this year, going through the workshops and the way we went through it. I think gave people not just time and opportunity, but it also, I appreciate you giving me time to go back to the staff and to be able to come forward with the questions I ask, good questions, and to be able to come forward and get the answers, because off the top of the head, it's not always there. But more than that, I do want to say one thing about this board, and this is universal to everybody here. Never once have you questioned West Hartford's commitment and my intentions towards mental health. And I do not believe there is another board that has invested more per pupil increases over the past 5 years in mental health than West Hartford does. We've done it because of our needs. Gretchen, I thank for her leadership in this area. And Rob, I really thank you for saying you're not the only one that says no, because they're all looking at me like, no, Tom says it way more. And to have to say no to Gretchen for anything is difficult, because I know at her heart what she's coming forward with. It just as every principal in the room, every teacher. But the investment, never questioning security, questioning, but never always putting student safety first, from the camera project, which I think 10 years ago would have been contentious, or 15 years ago, to the mental health investment and special education investment that the district's made. And also the commitment to diversity and professional development for cultural competency, and Rosina's position in recognizing that we have a supreme expert amongst us, and the more time that she gets with our buildings, with our principals, and inevitably with our kids, is going to help all of us to become even better as a district. Because as you know, Mark mentions accolades for the district, and I have heard Mark personally talk to people that were thinking about sending their kids to another school and talk about our public schools. And we're not where we want to be yet. I always try to be honest, and I don't always want to be rainbows and unicorns at a budget that we're exactly where we need to be. But your commitment to invest in us, the town's commitment to pay the bills, we take seriously. Everybody in the community, everybody in the audience take seriously, and we won't waste your money, and we'll keep trying to get better, and I give you that commitment as our superintendent, especially for those that somehow remain voiceless. We will try to give voice for them. As far as the only other thing that I want to mention that just came in is another thing that we really didn't talk about during this budget cycle, because it wasn't brought up as a cut, which is a testament to your commitment to the arts, and that was recognized once again by the NAM Foundation, National Association of Music Merchants. West Hartford Public Schools was once again named one of the best communities for music education in the United States. So tremendous for our schools, for Andy Mayo, and for all of our music teachers. Yeah, however you want to do it. So with that, thank you for your support. Thank you for the questions, and thank you for the discussion.
Thank you, Tom. Staff reports and board discussions, routine matters, financial report, approval of the financial report for the period ending February 28th, 2019. The recommendation that the Board of Education approve the financial report for the period ending February 28th, 2019. May I have a motion?
Seconded.
Discussion. Thank you, Mr. Ward.
I'm up to bat today, and I know the schedule, and I wish some people stayed in the room, because I wish we had led with this, because it just proves a little bit of my argument, not much, but it's projection. There he goes, page 3. Our projected balance as of for June 30th of this year, as of February 28th, is $1,356,000. So that's a projected balance that we will give back to the town, $1.3 million back to the town. So if we look at the general fund, and I wish the days when Jay did this, he did it with such vigor. I just can't find myself to get there, but he had, I guess, more exciting budgets. Because there's really nothing tremendously different about this budget as far as updates go. And if you look at some of the account salaries, and I'll just go through minor updates, like teacher salaries is a minor update, secretary salaries, 5115, a minor update, and then technical support, 5116, a minor update. And then you'll see at tutors, 5119, fewer homebound tutors, that's what represents that number. Nurses' salaries, a slight update. Secretaries, for temporary secretaries, 5140 is a minor update. And then teacher substitutions is a lower fill rate, especially among the daily subs. And then 5185, the teacher assistants, $90,000. It's a higher number of TAs, specifically for special ed, because those are the one-to-ones, so we see a little increase there. And then deferred compensation at $2,000. So again, a total variance of $103,000 for the general funds. And if we go into benefits, no real issues there. Unemployment, zero updates there. If we go into purchased services piece, professional and technical services and pupil transportation, you'll see 155,000, 5345 pupil transportation. They had to add 2 special ed buses for out of district costs, so that's what's representing there at the 5345. So that total for that particular piece is the same as 155. And then supplies, materials, and capital, $52,000. So no, not a significant piece. And then if we go into the state and the next page, page 5, if we go into state and federal grants, there's no changes to this page at all. And then if we go into page 6, special funds, minor changes, some rental revenue is up based on current rental arrangements. So it's those are the churches and such. And then nutritional services is actually doing well. Better than expected, better than as long as I think I've been on the board. Meal counts are flat, but federal revenue is up and other expenses are down. Our nutritional services people are doing a wonderful job getting those expenses down, and we see it here. We see it here as we're seeing actual no parentheses, so that's a good thing. Any questions? And Chip, may have missed of anything, or any questions?
One thing, because this is near the end of his financial reports, and I do also want to not thank Chip for the budget and for these financial reports. And I wanted to add one thing, Rob, because while I said no more, Chip says no way more than I do to people. So he's actually...
You got that book.
Exactly. But really, to thank him for the work that he's done on the budgets for West Hartford for years as he's doing this financial, and we're coming to the end of the year with financial examiners reports. The work Chip has done, it's not the math, it's the integrity and the ethical nature that Chip has that I can't say. Words don't express how much I value his contribution to West Hartford.
I'm just wondering if he has a twin brother that's looking for a job.
What do they call it? Doppelgangers or something? Doppelgangers? That's a new word.
Or any children that would possibly be interested in
We used to call it our twin. I just hope whoever replaces, and I hope I'm on the hiring, Chip likes to have Monday morning 6 a.m. meetings, and I just don't want, I can't deal with that anymore, so. But no, Chip, it's been I'm not going to say it now. Thank you for all your work.
Ready for the vote? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Thank you, Chip. Okay. Approve. Oops. Approval of the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of March 19th, 2019. That the Board of Education approve the minutes of the regular meeting of March 19th, 2019. May I have a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussions? I didn't see any corrections. Did I miss anything? Okay. All in favor? Aye. No opposed. Next item is the information and reports. Board members, communication and reports, reports from other boards and organizations, or other information and discussion. Anybody have anything? Mark?
I just like hearing myself today. I happened to attend the Quest Fair at KP yesterday, and we have some very talented young students out there, and it was a pleasure to see them. And I got to tell you, I think KP should have accolades for the way that they orchestrated and arranged everything. It was very well done, very easy to navigate and such. So everything from the students down to whoever planned it did so well, and it was so good to see all these kids. And I remember asking my daughter first when she was part of that program, I said, so what kind of grade do you get on this project? She goes, Dad, we don't get grades in Quest. And well, there's something to be said for that too. So I'm like, okay. But the amount of work that these kids did for their project was just amazing. It was very interesting, and kudos to everyone.
I want to thank everyone who was able to participate in What's Cooking. I always get the name. The fundraiser for the Foundation for West Hartford Public Schools. It was a very successful event, and thanks to all the folks who organized it and put it together. Personally, I need to thank my wife for stepping in when I wasn't at 100%, and she even got her picture on weha.com, so that was very nice. Appreciated that. And then on a personal note as well, we talk about we're volunteers and all. We've all had a situation like that. For me, tonight, my son went before the Eagle Scout Review Board during this meeting time, and I just got the word that he passed. So he's an Eagle Scout. Congratulations, Lucas. Thank you very much.
Staff communication and reports from student board representatives. Who would like to go first?
Hi, everyone. I'm here for the report from Hall. Sports are in full swing by now, and just about every spring team has begun their regular season of matches, and we're all looking forward to when the weather gets nicer so we can get out to games and cheer on our Warriors. On Friday, Hall had Cultural Fusion, which was a 40-minute assembly held over 2 sessions during which 15 students from countries other than the United States or who have different backgrounds as well as the entire Chinese class, shared an aspect of their culture to their peers through song, dance, poetry, fashion, or other visual performance. And it was a wonderful way to highlight and celebrate the diversity within our own Hall community. This past Wednesday, a bunch of students were inducted into the National Art Honor Society, which I think is such a cool thing that we have, and we congratulate them on this honor. Auditions were recently held for Shakespeare's The Tempest, which is our Black Box last play of the year, and the cast is wonderful. It looks like it's going to be a great show. We'll be premiering at the end of May, I believe. Hall recently competed against Gateway Regional High School in the As Schools Match Wits competition, which is a high school quiz show that airs on WBGY, and Hall was victorious. So we look forward to seeing the team members Brennan George, Jake Zweifler, Joey Corman, and Olivia Fan in the top 8 round, which will be very exciting. Students are leaving tomorrow for international trips this spring break. There's one trip heading to China on the Chinese field trip, and one trip heading to Italy and Greece on the classics trip. So we can't wait to hear updates from our peers about their endeavors abroad. Thank you so much.
All right, hey everyone. So I'm I'm sure you all know this, but the third quarter ended today and spring break starts next week. The date for graduation was just announced. It's going to be on June 13th. That cannot come soon enough. Mr. DiPolino of the math department will be the faculty speaker. Conard hosted the annual Connecticut Technology Student Association Conference. Conard won first place in multiple categories. There were teams there from Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New York. Conard also sent a team to the Chemistry Olympiad. I believe that was held at UConn. 5 of our students were able to advance to the second round, and Conard came in first overall. The senior class board hosted a lip sync battle last week to raise money for prom and other end-of-the-year events. We also had a bunch of students inducted into the National Art Honor Society, so congratulations to them. Also, congratulations to Senior Gabe Suarez for receiving the Scholar Athlete Award from the Doc Boiseau Northern Connecticut chapter of the National Football Foundation. And today is Autism Awareness Day, and all of our students and staff were encouraged to wear blue to support autism awareness. This weekend, Conard had 10 students at the History Day Regional Competition, and they're going to be moving on to the state-level competition in May, held at CCSU. Today and tomorrow at the Connecticut Convention Center in Hartford is the National College Fair, which is free and open to the public. It's a great way for students to connect with hundreds of colleges and universities on one spot. And later this month, on Thursday the 25th, will be a Community of Concern sponsored event titled Natural Support for Teen Emotional Health. It will be held at 7 p.m. in the Conard Seminar Room.
Future business. Announcement of future meeting dates. Tuesday, April 16th, 2019 will be a regular Board of Education meeting at 7 p.m. right here in Town Hall in this room, Legislative Chamber, room 314. Number 2, Tuesday, May 7th, 2019 will be the regular Board of Education meeting at 7 p.m. Again here, Town Hall and the Legislative Chamber. Number 3, Tuesday, May 21st, 2019, a regular Board of Education meeting at 7 p.m. here again in this room. And number 4, Tuesday, June 4th, 2019, sadly, will be our last Board of Education meeting for the year here in this room at 7 p.m. here in Town Hall. Do we have any requests for any future agenda items? Mark?
I know. I have an alibi, and I think it's appropriate for tonight, even my vote. I had coffee with a friend, a high school friend, and we were talking about our kids, and his son is in a Rhode Island college, and he had taken Chinese through West Hartford. He's a West Hartford student, and he's a sophomore now, going to be a junior, and peaked out in Chinese at a college level because of what West Hartford had offered, and I thought that was appropriate to mention, and I should have mentioned it earlier, but that kind of really hit me kind of square in the face, like, really? How is that possible? But yet that particular college, well, I mean, he peaked out in a language that West Hartford offered, and I thought that's pretty amazing.
For sharing that. Any comments from any visitors that I may have missed earlier on? I know that no one had signed up earlier. I don't know if someone has signed up since. Oh.
Ian Pullen. I just wanted to announce I came from the Connecticut Association of Schools 24th Annual Connecticut High School Outstanding Arts Awards Banquet. I was there early this evening where they did recognize 4 West Hartford students, and I actually brought the program in so I could say it. Cameron Slocum and Max Ryan from Conard, and Danielle Weinberg and Rachel Silver from Haw. So that's all.
Thank you, Ian. Does Ian need to identify his address and for the record? Thank you, Ian. No executive session. May I have a motion to adjourn? And a second?
Second.
Thank you, everybody, for a very healthy discussion and meeting.
I have a little thing
I meant 9:15. The time change.